My name is Dustin. I'm 39 years old, and I was born and raised in Newmarket, Tennessee. But I was born and raised more on the Kodak side, not like the Knoxville side, near the Smoky Stadium. I grew up there until I was about 15 or 16 years old, and then my parents and we moved to Talbot, where I'm currently residing now. I went to Jefferson County High School, graduated in the year of 1997. And I went to Maury Middle School prior to that in Dandridge. I was 19 when I got married, and then I'd worked at Sea Ray Boats in Knoxville for a couple of years, and my wife and I, at the time, we had some children, and then I started getting into the banking industry, and I worked at First Tennessee Bank for 7 years prior to starting at Walter State. I started Walter State in 2013, and I graduated in 2016. It took me an extra year because where I had been out of high school for so long, I had to take a lot of remedial courses. After 10 years, I could not test out of things, so I had to take remedial math and remedial English. It was a requirement from the institution. Balancing my time, that was the biggest challenge. Is being able to have enough time to spend with my children. I have 2 kids, a son who is 13 and a daughter who is 10. And I had school, I had work, my kids, and homework, and it was just challenging to balance all of those together to make them work together. I would neglect in one area and then try to prosper in another area. So the hardest part for me was to learn to take each area of my life and make it the best that I could, instead of just focusing on one, to learn to focus on all 3 at the same time. Well, one of the things that I started doing was I listened to a lot of self-help tapes, or not tapes, but like on the radio. I listened to Dr. Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins, and these are motivational speakers. And one of the things that I was listening to was what we look at, if we change the way that we look at things, what we look at will change. And so I just started to view things a little bit differently, like that there's 3 parts to us. There's like the spiritual part, the mental part, and like the emotional part. And so I felt like I was going around like just a 66% man, because I wasn't focusing on the emotional part. Like I was more so letting my children I'd tell them, leave daddy alone right now, I'm trying to do this, and then I had to see what was like important at the time. And so at the time, like whenever I would have my children, I would focus on them, and then I have split custody with them now, so then when I didn't have them, I would focus more on my schoolwork and things of that nature, and sacrifice. A lot of it is sacrifice. A lot of it is not just, I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to read if I could not get it done because I was at work, or I would stay up until midnight to finish a paper because I believe that, you know, like you are what you think about. And so if I visioned myself finishing school and visioned myself doing that, that kept me going forward, was my vision for myself. And to know that it wasn't permanent. Everything is temporary. Like I knew that I wouldn't have to get up every single day at 5 o'clock. I knew that I wouldn't have to go to bed every night at midnight. And so I listened to Dave Ramsey a lot, who's a financial guy, and he was saying that, you know, he would walk through broken glass for a little bit of time if he knew that there was an end result. And so I started looking at the end result and knowing that the end result is I want to get an education to better myself and to better my family. So that's really what got me going, is just the discipline to say, hey, you know, toughen up and do it, because it's got to be done. Absolutely. I believe wholeheartedly in, I don't like when people say, do what I say, don't do what I do, because it is proven monkey see, monkey do. We become a product of our environment. And so I definitely 100% believe that my children seeing me work for that, and knowing that I'm a single dad, and knowing the sacrifices that I've had to make, because I talk to my kids all the time, and my daughter gets so upset with me because she'll get in the car, she's like, oh, Tony Robbins again, because I'll be listening to Tony Robbins in the car and stuff. But I can already tell that like my son is picking up on what I call the law of attraction. If you guys don't know what that is, it's like positivity attracts positivity, negativity attracts negativity. And one day I was saying something, and he said, yeah, Daddy, it's just like you said. And then he had said a quote that I had said. So yeah, I absolutely think that has definitely impacted them, because now both of them want to go to school. Truthfully, the 100% acceptance rate, that I knew that I could come here. And also I knew several people that had come here that were older students, and so I didn't feel intimidated, because I knew that I would not be the oldest person in the classrooms. And it was local, and it had a good reputation for being a good school.
Okay.
I decided, I was 36 whenever I came back to school. And what made me decide to come back to school was I started looking at time and thinking, time's going to pass me by no matter what. Whether I'm 36 and going to school, or 36 and working as a bagger at Ingles, time is still going to be time. So I made up my mind to start school, and I did not have a clue of what I wanted to do. So I took the field that most people do, and I took nursing at first. And then after that, I just decided that nursing is not for me, so I'd switched my major halfway through to a psychology major. And everyone was very supportive of that decision, because they said that I was definitely better suited to be a counselor or speaker type instead of a nurse. My daily schedule was, I took a lot of night courses. I tried to work from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then whenever I would get out of work, I would be up here. I work in Dandridge, so I would be up here at 6 o'clock. And then I would take as many night classes as I could. Like when I first started, I only started with 2 courses, and they were both night classes. I took a Saturday class that was a speech class. So I tried to take as much as I could at night, so it was not taken away from me at work. And then I would miss like maybe a couple of hours during the day on certain days if we had finals or exams of that nature, so that way I could study some more. My boss was really good about working with me on my school schedule, but the majority of the time I took night classes until I couldn't take them anymore. You hear a lot of people say, do the best that you can do, and sometimes just doing is hard enough. My greatest accomplishment would be just doing, because there's so many people, especially my age, that say that they don't want to, they don't have the time, or they don't have the energy, but I think that personally is just an excuse, because it holds them accountable. Because they're like, well, I'm 39 and I'm not in school, and he is, and so then they have to be held accountable. Like, why is he in school and I'm not? So just the fact of doing it, to me, was my biggest accomplishment, because I proved that I could do it, because it was difficult to even get started. But I do believe that the carrying on isn't the hard part. Like Tony Robbins says, the getting started is always the hard part. But then once you get started, the momentum usually will carry you through. At first, I was embarrassed. And I know that sounds weird, to be embarrassed to start school, but I started thinking like, well, what will people say? What will people think? And my biggest fear was the fear of failure, of me starting school and then getting halfway through a semester and saying, I can't do this. So when I told my kids that I was going to go back to school and stuff, I knew that I had to follow through, because I totally believe that if I didn't follow through, that teaches them not to follow through. And I always tell my kids, stick with your commitments. If you say you're going to do something, as far as it depends upon you to do it. So I struggled at first with, do I tell people or not? I was going to kind of just go to night classes when I didn't have my kids, because I have them every other weekend. I have them exactly split custody, but I could have fixed it to where I did not have them while I was going to school and stuff. And it was going to be kind of like one of those things, because if I tell somebody, then I'm held accountable. So I thought about it, and then after I told them, you know, they were like really excited and stuff for me to get started back in school. How did Walters State help me achieve my goals? That's a good question. No one in my family had ever graduated college, whether it be a community college or whether it be a university. So Walters State, one of my goals was just to prove that I could finish something. And so when I started Walters State, that was my first goal, was to prove that I could finish it. I didn't think about going any further at first. I was going to get into the nursing program, which, you know, would be your 2 years, and I was going to do all of my work here at Walters State. And then in the middle of all of that, I realized, like, I think that once you reach a goal, like, first goal was, I said, was to finish, but that's not true. The first goal was to get started. And then it's like in the middle, then you always evaluate your goals, or I evaluate my goals. I don't know if everyone does, but I'm always evaluating my goals and seeing if my life is in sync with my goals. So the first goal that I had was to get started. I accomplished that. Second goal was just to finish. So not only did I finish, I also graduated with honors. And then it built my confidence to know that I could compete. Because at 35, 36, 37, 38 years old, you know, sitting in classrooms with 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who had no jobs, who still lived at home, and I was still making the same grades that they were making with a family, working, and trying to do extracurricular activities. And that, to me, showed me that I could do anything. If I could do that and compete with people that were 20 years younger than I was, that was my biggest accomplishment, knowing that I could compete. And that has kept me going forward to go to Carson Newman now and realize that I'm competing alongside of people who are in that same category that was at Walters State, that are younger, still at home, and I'm still being able to compete. So that's a huge accomplishment in my mind. One of the biggest things that surprised me about Walters State was the diversity of people, like the age groups. At first, I thought that there would just be a couple of non-traditional students that were here, and I was very surprised that out of the 3 years that I came here, I was never the oldest person in the classroom. And another thing that surprised me was I don't really know how to word this, the non-judgmental attitudes that the younger students took toward me. Like at first, whenever I first came here, I was thinking that, oh, they're going to look at me like I'm just the old guy or something. But then I just realized that we were all, I guess an analogy would be like we're all reading the same book, we're just on different chapters. And I'm just on a different chapter than some of the younger students. But that surprised me that it was, in no time at all, I felt very comfortable here. I did not feel like that I was being stereotyped. I didn't feel any certain way, and I just started just viewing myself as, I'm just a student. You're just a student. We're just different ages, but we're still students. Like I would tell myself, it's temporary, it's going to be hard, but you can do it. A lot of times, even the people that are supportive of you will put stipulations on you. And I'll tell you about this analogy that I was listening to this guy. His name was Zig Ziglar, and he was talking about training fleas. And he said that they had taken a mason jar and they put fleas in a mason jar, and they just left the lid off, and the fleas would continue to keep jumping out. And they did this for some time, and then they closed the mason jar, and then the fleas would jump up to the top, fall down, jump up to the top and fall down, and then afterwards they took the lid off, and the fleas would jump up, fall back down, even with the lid off. And so one of the things I would tell myself is, don't be the flea that once the lid's off, because I'll still limit myself to a certain extent. And I would tell myself, don't be like that, because you can jump out. You're able to jump out, and it will be hard, but you can do it. Because even the people that were inspiring to me, they were like that lid, kind of like, oh, well, you can do it, but now, there's so many people out there that's going back to school for this or this. And it's kind of like the people that are saying that, though, it's like they're giving you advice from their point of view. And that's one thing that I've learned, is people always view things from their point of view. Like, I'll give you, like, this interview is from my point of view. Everything is from that person's point of view. So the people that were giving me that was their point of view. And now I have to realize that a point of view, that's not reality. Reality is I can do it. And so I would tell myself, basically the same that I've been doing is just keep pushing, keep moving forward. And so I guess I'm speaking to myself now so I'm talking to my past self and my present self and my future self, like, keep it going. How I dealt with the stress was, I looked at it like, no matter what happens, you have to get this done. So I started to kind of view things as like, might as well I started to try to get it done as early as possible, instead of not being so stressed out. Like, if I knew that I had going back to, like I said earlier, like breaking it down into parts, I would look at the syllabus, and if it would say that, like, I knew that chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 would be like the first part of the semester, I would already start reading ahead of schedule, so I could not be bombarded all at once. So if I knew there was 100 pages to read, I would, on some of the things, like if we had a month to read 100 pages, like, okay, chapter 1's 100 pages, I've got a month, I might only just read like 5 pages a day or 6 pages a day to equal up to the 100. So I wouldn't be sitting down in one area and trying to read 100 pages and take 9-10 hours to read, and my brain wouldn't be able to process it. So as I was able to cut down into sections more and more, I was able to release some of that stress. Because I think that a lot of the stress we put on ourselves with the deadlines. I would almost venture to say that everybody watching this video, 95% of every college student, and myself included, is a procrastinator of some sort. And we know that a project is due Wednesday, and we're up till 12 o'clock in the morning trying to just cram it in. So I started to realize that, man, I'm the reason that I have so much stress. It's not necessarily the professors being hard, or it's not so much work. It's just like, take this and break it down into sections. So that's how I dealt with it, was just break everything down into sections, instead of, it's kind of like if you're getting ready to climb some stairs. When you look at it, you don't start at the bottom and jump all the way to the top. You walk up the stairs. And so I started realizing that college is a walk upstairs. It's not jumping from the bottom of the steps all the way to the top. So that's what I would do to relieve some of my stress, was like take the stairs instead of like try to jump it. Oh, that would be a simple one, just walking across and getting my diploma. That would be my proudest moment. Actually, let me go back, because it is a twofold answer. It's like I have two proudest moments. The first one was when I pulled in to the campus for the first time in my car. That was a proud moment. And then they're both equally proud to me, because it was like and I know this is going to sound weird, but it was like almost like I didn't want to leave here because I grew, I mean, as old as I am, I can't say I grew up here, but it was like I grew into me here at Walters State. It was the college that it was like the stepping stone, and I realized, like, you know, it's so important. It's a great school, and it gave me confidence. And so it was actually even hard to leave, but when I did leave, it was a joyful occasion. So 2 moments: the first day and the last day. Oh, absolutely, yes. The reason being is because I keep going back to this, but everything is temporary. The hard times that I go through, I know that it's temporary. It's just like in nature. It can't rain forever. It can't be sunny forever. And everything is temporary. And like I had said earlier, now my momentum is carrying me through, because the hardest part was like when I got started, I was like, oh my gosh, I need 68 or 65 credit hours. And then once I got that, and then I go to Carson Newman, it's like, I need 6 more, but then it's like, oh wow, I only need 30 more credit hours and I'm done. And then it's even inspired me to keep even going further, that I'm going to get my master's, and then I'm going to get my doctorate, because like I said earlier in the interview, is time is time. So no matter what, even if it takes me 5 years, I'll still be the same age with or without my doctorate. So I definitely think that the struggle is worth it.